afterwards. So you don't have to worry about taking notes or screen capturing slides. You'll get a copy of that. And also there will be a survey at the end of the conversation, and we hope that you'll share your feedback on your thoughts with this. Looks like we have a few more people joining. So again, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box. And now I'd like to hand it over to Hannah from WaterAid. Hannah, if you want to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Susan. Struggled to find the mute button there. Yeah, so as the title of the webinar suggests, this session is really about practical examples of WASH system strengthening from the SusWASH programme. But before we get stuck into those discussions, we thought it would be useful just to explain a little bit about the SusWASH programme, the background behind it, before we dive into those discussions. So that's what I'll be doing now. So the SusWASH programme is a five-year initiative being implemented in Cambodia, Ethiopia, Pakistan and Uganda. It has a global learning component to facilitate learning exchange, course correction at the global level, to disseminate learning across the WaterAid Federation, the SusWASH programme and globally. And it's really trying to tackle the systemic barriers to WASH, inclusion, sustainability and scale. And it's supported by the H&M Foundation, and that's why we have Maria on this call with us today. So where did the SusWASH programme really come from? Well, it's all very well known for many of us on the call that there are many challenges affecting the realisation of SDG 6, and these can be boiled down to poor WASH sustainability, poor WASH or persistent social exclusion and marginalisation, people continuously being left behind, poor WASH scalability, the approaches and delivery methods not achieving the scale that we would hope or expect, and insufficient prioritisation of learning and adaptation, learning what works, what doesn't work, and changing our methods of delivery and ways of working as we go. So these four interrelated challenges are stifling progress and really requires a step change away from business as usual of ways of working, and looking at a whole systems perspective and systems way of working to tackle these interrelated challenges. So when we talk about the WASH system, and again, all of this will be not new to many of you on the call, our aim is really to ensure and realise WASH rights for everyone, particularly the most marginalised people. So that's at the core of our mission within the WASH sector and as WaterAid. And around the realisation of those WASH rights and sustainable and inclusive WASH services are a number of actors and institutions and people who have a role to play in the delivery of those services to ensure that they last and reach everyone. And you can see some of these people and institutions, actors on the screen here. And then there are also the factors, and this language obviously is used by many Agenda for Change members, actors and factors, such as financing, coordination, monitoring, that all have a role to play in whether or not WASH lasts and reaches everyone. And between those actors and factors are relationships, power dynamics, social and cultural norms, gender dynamics, politics that interact and affect whether or not those functions work, that there's capacity to deliver and ensure WASH is sustainable and reaches everyone. So those barriers exist within and between the different functions, between the different factors and actors, and it's really trying to unlock those barriers within the system, within the whole ecosystem, to ensure that WASH lasts and reaches everyone that we're trying to do within the SusWASH programme and through our system strengthening work. And within the WASH system and then within the SusWASH programme and as WaterAid, there's a level of influence that we can have, which you can see with this blue haze here, and it's really through working in partnership, collective action, that we can unlock some of these barriers to bring about that change. So definitely acknowledging that we can't do this alone. It requires close collaboration and partnership as well. Unlocking barriers within the system requires working at multiple levels. Again, this won't be new to many people. So in SusWASH, working at multiple levels at local and district government levels to unlock what those barriers, identify what those barriers might be within the system that might exist at regional or provincial or national levels in policy or regulation or standards, and also playing a role at the global level, disseminating learning, global advocacy through global advocacy fora as well. And of course, system strengthening is quite complex, and there are challenges that arise along the way, and you might have fixed outcomes of what you want to achieve, but the pathway to achieving those outcomes is sometimes unknown, and challenges arise and you have to stop and adapt. So this diagram here is just to say that quite a lot of focus was put on adaptive management and learning to really understand what the barriers were at the start, to design a plan of action in collaboration with others, to pause and analyze, reflect what challenges have arisen, what do we need to adapt, what have we learned from what we've done so far, what do we need to do differently, and adapting our plan and implementing again. So that this is the process we've been taking to analyze and adapt and learn as we go. To design the SusWASH program, we attempted to break down some of this complexity by using a building block framing, which you can see on the screen, which many other WASH agencies have also got. You know, Agenda for Change have got a set of building blocks, WSUP, IRC, WASH. So this is just WaterAid's kind of framing of what some of those components of the WASH system look like. And this is just a simple way of trying to understand how you might design a program. And these analysis of building blocks are complemented by other analysis tools, such as political economy analysis, to try and identify what those power relationships and dynamics are as well that have a role to play. And then we've also used the same building block framing to design a measurement framework within the program to try and track change within the system. Ultimately, we want to see improvements within each component of the WASH system, and also find ways to identify changes in those power relationships, the interactions between them, the people who make up the system. And this is an evolving process and tool that we're on within WaterAid, and that we've piloted in SusWASH. We've had a number of achievements, most notably in the number of people who have gained access, either through direct demonstration of WASH delivery models, but also in terms of government planning and budgeting processes, national monitoring management information systems, clarifying roles and responsibilities, coordination mechanisms, which my colleagues on the call will talk much more about in detail next. So I think I'll stop there, and I just want to do a little poll to see how this framing of the WASH system that I have just presented compares to your understanding of and framing of WASH system strengthening. So it won't take very long. I'll just launch the poll now, and you can tell us what you think. Hopefully you can see it on your slides, on your screen now. Great, so we have 52% of people have voted. Can maybe spend a few more seconds, see if anyone else wants to vote. Okay, great, let's leave that there. Thank you everyone for voting. I'll stop the poll now. And these are the results. So it looks like similar or the same. You know, most people are saying it's the similar or the same framing. So that's good. If only we could have more of a conversation about how your framings differ. If only polls would allow us to do that. But I'll pass Can you see? Maybe you can't see. Share results. Maybe you can see now. Great. So 48%, 45%. I'll hand back to Susan now. Thanks, Susan.
Great, thanks. And now that we've got lots more people on the call, it looks like about 100 participants, very exciting, I would like to introduce our panelists. And we have a wonderful group of people from around the world, and it looks like our participants are also from all over. So in no particular order, I'll say Sohail Nazir. He's the program manager for WaterAid Pakistan. He has a degree in mechanical engineering and a certificate in project management for professionals. He has been working in the WASH sector for the past 20 years, including 8 years in emergency response at national and international levels, and with WaterAid for the past 12 years. He has been a lead at designing and delivering WaterAid Pakistan's district-wide program in the Muzaffargarh district, which was declared the first ever open defecation-free district of Pakistan in November 2019. Big accomplishment. Apologies for mispronunciation. Sokan Su. Mr. Sokan Su has over 10 years of WASH programming experience. He's a leader in the WASH sector in WaterAid Cambodia and has built strong, credible relations with senior leadership with the Ministry of Rural Development and Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. These are key government ministries that lead and drive WASH sector in Cambodia. Sokan currently manages WaterAid's Sector Strengthening Program, which is a multi-million-dollar program across 5 provinces in Cambodia. This program has garnered significant attention across the sector in Cambodia, resulting in multiple additional funds being attracted from several donors. Caesar Kambogwe is the manager of the SusWASH program in Uganda. He's a program development specialist and policy analyst trained in environment and natural resources management with over 10 years experience working with civil society on a broad range of sector strengthening processes and aspects of water, sanitation, environmental health, forestry, and climate change. And then Segareta Abraham is a policy advocacy expert with long-standing experience on advocacy strategy, development and implementation, WASH campaigns delivery, program management, and country program leadership with more than 12 years of experience in more than 5 international NGOs, WaterAid, Oxfam, CARE, FHI 360, and World Vision in different sectors, WASH, nutrition, and livelihood. And then Maria Biestedt is from the H&M Foundation. She's their strategy lead. She has managed the partnership with WaterAid since the foundation's inception in 2013 and drives a strategic direction of the foundation's social development programs, within which systems thinking is core. And of course, you've met Hannah already, Crichton Smith, who's the Sustainable WASH Advisor and Global Learning Lead for SusWASH program at WaterAid. She's been working at WaterAid on WASH system strengthening and water security since 2016. Welcome to all of our panelists. And I'm glad we can see your pictures here since some of you aren't able to do your videos right now. And as I'm speaking, I hope you'll remember to upvote any questions in the Q&A or add your own about the SusWASH program. And you can direct them towards a particular panelist or just anybody. And we will get to your questions in a minute. But first, I have a few of my own. So, to Caesar, about working with government and in partnership, can you tell us about the WASH Mayors Forum in Uganda, in Kampala? Has it been worth your effort? And what advice would you have for other organizations who want to build similar political commitment?
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. Caesar Chimbugwe is my name. I manage the SusWASH program in Uganda. The experience given the question that you put forward for me. So in Uganda, we worked with the Kampala Capital City Authority, which is the local authority for the capital city in Uganda. And by doing so, we've been able to mobilize and form a WASH Mayors Forum, which is composed of mayors from the Greater Kampala metropolitan area. And those are about 10 mayors, including the Lord Mayor for the capital city in Kampala. Really, why we've been able to do this is to galvanize political support and ownership, at the same time ensuring coordination, joint planning, learning, beyond the administrative boundaries of these municipalities, because we realize coordinate the social demographics are such that a lot of people work in the cities but then reside outside of such capital cities. And it's the same that is happening in Kampala, where you have about 5 million people daytime population, but 5 million people daytime population and 1.5 for the residents. So it makes planning very difficult, that the city authorities will plan for sewage facilities, public sanitation facilities for 1.5 million people, but then they become overwhelmed during daytime. So we've been able to mobilize these political leaders to come together to regulate fecal slide management, solid waste management, but also issues to do with public sanitation. And this has helped to strengthen their coordination, but also ensure that there is stronger within the forum. We've been able to see the passing of the fecal slide management ordinance, and also ensuring that the private sector provides informal settlements. And it has also ensured that there is cross-learning and support between the peri-urban municipalities. Some of them have been supported through this forum to develop bankable projects that are funded through off-budget support from donors. In terms of challenges, what I can share with the rest of the planning to implement similar programs on board, because they are quick passing budgets, but sometimes making them appreciate the value of system strengthening doesn't happen very quickly. So in many cases, they are demanding for direct service delivery. They want to respond to their constituencies in terms of providing these services, but we've been able to engage with them, and slowly, but they're appreciating the value of system strengthening and not particularly provision of these services, which may not be sustained. And government leadership is a key entry point to unlocking most of these system blockages, but requires continuous analysis of power dynamics, especially between the political and technical leaders, who sometimes do not work closely together. Yeah, so for now, I can share that with you, and I'll be welcoming additional questions. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you so much, Caesar. Yeah, I heard some really key points there, that strengthening of systems doesn't happen quickly, and that government leadership is key, and recognizing those power dynamics. And another piece that's really interesting is thinking beyond boundaries. Sometimes with system strengthening, we talk about a district-wide approach or a municipal approach, but sometimes you need to think beyond the boundaries of the system that you're trying to affect. Great. So I'll move on next to Sohail with a similar topic on government and partnership. What challenges did you experience working with government, and how did you overcome them? If you can unmute yourself, join us.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I think the major and the foremost challenge in context of Pakistan while you work with the government is that there is huge mistrust within the government about the work and approach and intention of NGOs and INGOs. So in order to be effective, you need to create a level of trust, as well as you have to prove your worth. So whatever you are doing in partnership with government, you have to spell out the value addition, which will bring into that partnership. And at times, you may need to align your plans with the government. Like for example, in our case, we planned to work in certain schools, but then when we had a meeting with the education department, they had their own plan to develop model schools in that province. So we have to include some of those schools into our lists. And that gave us kind of, we won the government confidence in that. Again, in particular district where we are implementing this sector strengthening work, we developed WaSH asset mapping, and that was to support government in effective WaSH planning. So we did it in a small part of the district, and when we presented that work to Public Health Engineering Department, which is the key department in implementing water and sanitation, they saw worth in that, and kind of they owned the entire process, and they requested WaterAid to expand this exercise to the entire district. So that's how we kind of deepened our partnership with Public Health Engineering Department. Again, if you're working with the government, you also need to identify friends, champions, and like-minded people within the government who work as a catalyst to accelerate the process. The second challenge is that government usually works with a very traditional and bureaucratic approach. So the process they follow are very, very slow and time consuming. We found it really hard to set timelines for some of the activities, and completing those activities always remained a challenge. Like for us, signing an LOU with one department took us 5 months because of this red tapeism, but we remained very, very patient because we wanted the process to take time and the ownership of the particular government department. So we built that flexibility and cushion within our plans. And I think we also had, of late, we had challenges related to COVID, when there were a lot of restriction on public meetings, gatherings. So when you had to change your approach, as Hannah mentioned in her presentation, that we used adaptive planning instead of holding public meetings or one-to-one meetings. We changed our approach. We held some virtual meetings with some of the government officials to kind of continue the process. So, and again, like it's when you're doing system strengthening work for government, I think the major interest is in hardware things. So I mean, you have to build that certain part within your project of demonstrating service delivery model. That's how you demonstrate your work, and kind of they accept it, that okay, you are investing something where you are building some infrastructure for the communities, which is adding into their plan. So if I summarize it, you need to kind of continuously engage with the government. You need to build trust with the government, and you need to identify like-minded people with the government to take your agenda forward. I'll stop here.
That's fantastic. Yeah, so it sounds like the process is just as important as the outcomes when you're talking about leadership and developing plans. Really interesting. And that time dimension, of course, comes in as well, if you can't rush these things. Thanks. And now on to finance, the difficult, one of the other difficult aspects of system strengthening. Sokan, how about you? Let's talk about what strategies you've used to leverage investment from other actors in WaSH. Oh, we can see you now. Great. If you could unmute yourself. I think he might be talking, but Hannah, can you unmute him? There we are.
And yes, thank you, Susan, and hello everyone. And do you hear me? Yeah.
We can hear you. It's breaking up a little. You might want to turn your video back off and see if that helps.
Yeah. Yes.
It's nice to see you, but perhaps the video is making your connection slow.
Hello.
Yes, that might be better. So what strategies have you used to leverage investment from other actors in WaSH?
Just checking. Do you hear me? Or?
I do. Can you hear me? Might have some problems with connection. What if we come back to you? And we'll move on to Segareta
Hello.
in Ethiopia. Well, we'll come back to Sokon. Okay, Segareta, and again on finance. While it's helped to attract some investment in WASH in the district, what more do you think needs to be done to attract investment? So you've worked with district administration and other sector offices for the costed WASH plan, but what else do you think you need to get more investment? Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Yes, we worked with the district to develop their life cycle costing and develop a fully costed WASH plan. But funding that master plan at the district level have become a challenge, as you mentioned. So a lot needs to be done. There has been some financing and funding as a result of developing a master plan for WASH, but the gaps are still huge. So what we propose and we have discussed is that a lot of funding is still maintained at the zonal and regional level. It's not decentralized to the district level. So we propose and advocate for fiscal decentralization, more funding basically on maintenance, minor and major maintenance to go down to the district. And a lot of this funding all held by the zone is also unspent. And at the district level, as you might know, the accountability and the closeness to community make districts more accountable, more willing to respond to community demands, and more active in terms of delivering services. But they don't have the finance, they don't have the capacity to do that. So a lot more decentralization is proposed, and use of existing resources wherever they are. But also we have identified the capacity to fundraise. So the district need to use this master plan and to market it. It's not enough to develop a plan, a fully costed plan. It should be marketed. They need capacity to fundraise, but also to develop projects, to design water facility, WASH facility systems. So the designing, the project development stage is really important. Another area that should be invested on is cost sharing. In the district we work in Golucha, people are willing and they are prepared to contribute, especially for household level WASH facilities like connections. But there is no system for cost sharing. A lot can be done in terms of raising costs and people getting access to loans, small kind of loans, so that they pay and contribute for WASH costs, whether it's water or sanitation facilities. So if there is a system of microfinancing, that will also contribute to cost sharing in a way. So these are the things that as a project, also as WASH system strengthening program, we need to focus on beyond supporting the financing capacity and life cycle costing of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. It sounds like you've thought a lot about different methods. When you mentioned capacity for fundraising or marketing a plan, who are they marketing the plan to?
In the strategy that we have, it's basically other donors in the district and at the national level. So at the district level, there are few donors, but at the zonal level, there are donors that will support, that are willing to support a fully developed plan. So, but also a strong district with very good capacity and having a well-developed plan on when they can reach universal access, what capacity they need, not just in terms of financing for the facilities, but also in terms of human capacity they need, tend to get more financing. So it's opening up and not necessarily having a workshop, but a workshop is one plan they had, but also having a one-to-one with donors in terms of presenting their plan. But they have also presented their plan at the zonal meetings. So if they are more prepared than other districts, they tend to get more financing. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are some good tips for other people who are trying to attract more financing to the districts where they work, or helping the governments do that. I would like to go back to this issue of power dynamics. Sohail and Cesar, you both kind of touched on this. Could you tell us more about how you assess that and what you can do with that information? So I'll start with Sohail.
I think it's really a tough question to answer because the project we are implementing is in rural setup, where government has kind of comparatively less responsibility than in the urban areas. So most of the water supply and sanitation is community supplied, and to kind of even the major repairs are responsibility of the communities to take forward. So we have been working with the government. Like the only tool we used is to sensitize them that while they are planning, though within theoretical framework they have that a part within their approach that while design a scheme, they need to kind of consult community, they need to look into the isolated pockets, the non-uncovered areas, but this hardly happens. I mean, mostly the plans are done very, very politically influenced plans. So if there is a political member in a particular area and there are 2 schemes allocated for that district, so that will particularly be decided on the whim of that political leadership. So it has been really tough to do that, but we do analyze things like through our WASH asset mapping work in Tata. We went to the public schemes, which in their papers were shown as functional. But out of the 7 public scheme, we found that 4 or 5 were kind of, one was partially functional, 2 or 3 were never visited for the last 3-4 years. So we brought that information to them, and they saw, I mean, some of the people who were really interested to improve their planning process, they saw worth in that, and they requested that we should expand the process to the entire district, so they exactly know where the uncovered pockets are. And similarly within the community, we also do, like, since as I told you, it's a community supplied thing, so we have village organization, we have WASH committees which are representative of those communities, and we teach them, like, kind of, we tell them about the tools, how they can engage with those people who are isolated or they don't have water and sanitation. And while they kind of allocate resources, they should take care of those uncovered areas. So yeah, I think academically we cover it through various exercises, and then we do mobilization within the community. We have also trained, I think, about 50 people from public health engineering department on this WASH rights and all those kind of thing. But how practical is that, or how they implement it into their plans, is still a big question mark, because we are only 3 years into this process, and probably they are practicing something which is, say, 50-60 years old. So I would not claim that we have made a great impact in that, but obviously we are trying, and we have another 2 years to give it like a little more try and see if that comes up within their plans. I'll stop here.
Thank you. It's really interesting to think about how data and information can help perhaps to change power dynamics. If people are presented with it, it's harder to make those choices based on feelings and where somebody lives. How about Cesar, since you were working with a group of political leaders, it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on, you know, how you assess power dynamics, where you saw disparities, and what you've been able to do to address those. Caesar, if you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I think I'm having internet connection challenges. My
It
bandwidth
happens.
should be going
We can hear you
very
fine.
low. Yeah, so during inception of the SusWASH program, we conducted a power analysis and we did a mapping of the different stakeholders and also analyzed the power dynamics. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to identify political leaders as key stakeholders that the SusWASH program had to engage with in the Ugandan context. So, and like the question goes, these power dynamics happen at different levels, even within the communities. So even at the community levels, we've identified those local leaders at the community level where we are engaging, and these have been very critical, including the local council one political leaders. And there are also individuals at the community levels who have come out to volunteer and be able to support the delivery of the project. And those community structures, including women, including youth, we've also done a mapping of different vulnerabilities, bringing on board women organizations, organizations for persons living with disabilities, and those kinds of power dynamics are at play at all those levels. So we've been able to work with all of them, and that helps also in sustaining the initiatives, the programs of implementation. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you, and we heard you, I think, just fine. Let's see if we can come back to Sokan. Maybe we can hear you now.
Hello?
Yes, hi Susan.
Oh,
Do you hear
great,
me?
great.
Yeah,
Can we
yes.
come back to the question I had for you about the strategies you've used to leverage investment from other actors in WASH?
Yes, thank you. So the strategy in Cambodia that we have for the background of the project, we for start we just only select the 2 districts at the rural area in Kampong Chnang that we use the context analysis by use system building block assessment like Hannah mentioned, and then the result we found that the financing is the one building block that very low and challenging, and what in Cambodia we use the evidence-based advocacy approach or influencing, and then we're working with our partner and local authority to did the provincial-wide safely manage access to water that aim to understand about the water availability potential and diversify potential that can inform to the commune and local authority to understand the real situation and the administration coverage area. And we call the commune scheme, that all the data in there is like mentioned about the total population and also the key players who are working in that area, and some area that challenging in drought or flooding community, and also the area that most marginalized people living in, and also the possible for investment in pipe connection or possible for hand pump, and also the some challenging to promoting sanitation, so that of the information can have the commune to give the decision and also the develop their WASH action plan or commune action plan, and also easy for them to cost calculation and allocate their own budget in promoting inclusive and sustainable for service. And adding to that, we also the support to the district and commune authority to do the life cycle costing to better understanding how much that they need to allocate their annual budget to support the WASH service. So it is easy for them to arrange the number of budget that they require and who is the donor that they can mobilize additional funding to support. And the way that we are working, we're working with national and sub-national level, and also the way that we influence not just only at the sub-national level, we also working with the national level, with the Ministry of Rural Development by supporting and so engage with them to participate and register the member of the sanitation and water for all. It is the international platform that can share the commitment with the global, and when the government in Cambodia participate into the member, they have a commitment to invest on the water budget allocation for water, and also to reduce the inequality in the water sector also. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. That's really interesting to hear about. Again, another example, it sounds like, where data or information can help to leverage change in the system, as well as these global commitments. It'll be interesting to see how those help in holding governments accountable. I wanted to point out, I should have mentioned at the beginning, but if you haven't seen them already, I believe there's a series of videos that WaterAid has captured with lots more information from each of these speakers, and maybe Hannah or Tara, you could put the link to those in your chat box. If you haven't had a chance to watch them, you should after this, not yet. But so I want to get back to this conversation about in working with governments and encouraging them to see the value of working in a system strengthening approach. And in Ethiopia, Sagaretta, you were working in the Golocha district in Oromia, where WASH services, WASH coverage and service levels are particularly low. And what was the reaction of government when you said you wanted to work on other areas of the WASH system when the service levels were so low? You know, how did you make that case to them? You could unmute yourself and join us.
Thank you so much, Susan. Yes, in the district we work in Ethiopia, in Golocha, WASH coverage was extremely low, and even the reported coverage was not real, and service availability and reliability was very low. And the way we did it, obviously the primary need that came up when we started was we need water. That's the primary need. But the way we did it is we started with a context analysis where the district government itself assessed the different gaps they have, and they raised the different areas. Like, for instance, they identified that the gaps in service delivery is not just related to financing; it's also related to capacity, to monitoring, to service delivery capacity as well, minor and major maintenance capacity, but also strategic planning and also ad hoc actions, not coordinated actions. So these are the whole sector have came together: the water, sanitation, health, finance, and the Bureau of Labor and Social Affairs that deal with inequality. And the Women Affairs came together to assess how well they are doing in terms of these different areas. So they identified actually that all these things are lacking, and that contributes to the services not being there, but also to existing services not being sustainable. Although there was initially some resistance, there's also an understanding that even if we have the finance, we will not know how to deliver the service and sustain the service. So it's a process. It didn't happen over time, but it started with looking at how well they are doing in these different areas and how that has affected service delivery in the district. Thank you.
Thanks. That's really interesting to think about helping them self-assess in areas they might not think of as immediately connected to the thing that you see, the water service deliveries. And it takes some time to get people comfortable with that. And I wanted to also ask Maria, you've been quietly waiting for us, but maybe you could help kind of tie some of these thoughts together in terms of why do you think this way of working is important for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you, Susan. Social challenges, they don't exist in silos, but in complex systems, and therefore the solutions need to be holistic and go beyond silos in order to address the systemic change that needs to happen. And system strengthening work addresses the core of a problem rather than the symptoms, which is really the only way to create long-term positive change, and especially in order to ensure inclusion of the most marginalized. So instead of directing a siloed intervention to solve a development challenge, you need to take on a holistic approach and in the ecosystems where the target group exists, and ensure that the most marginalized are heard and included. And silo busting, as I like to call it, is key to achieving the SDGs. These 17 quite different goals are so interconnected. There are synergies between each of them, and silos tend to work against synergies and suppress the multiplier effects that action in one area can have on other areas. And in the concrete case of SusWASH, it literally means ensuring that our investments will not be flushed down the drain, because if you don't have functioning institutions and duty bearers to take responsibility for operation and maintenance of services, or for that matter, if people don't have an awareness of their rights as citizens, that expensive infrastructure will eventually break down and be abandoned, and there's no sustainability in that. And SusWASH as a program goes hand in hand with the H&M Foundation's vision to be a catalyst for change, to make sure that we fund sustainable projects that really make a lasting difference for people. And I'd say that if we want to reach the 2030 agenda, we need to stop looking for good old best practice in silos and instead work in ecosystems to invent next practice together. Thank you.
That's great. And it sounds fantastic, moving from best practice to next practice. But at the end of the day, people have to tell something to their boards, right? And check off some boxes. So I'm curious, what are the challenges that you might have experienced in making the case for funding this work, or continuing to think longer term in an ecosystem approach?
Yeah, it's difficult to have roadmaps when you're working towards systems change. There are no roads where we're going. We're basically building the roads. And this is, of course, a huge challenge that we have to be humble before. And if I realize, of course, this is a problem for some, that you need to convince your board, or so to reflect from a donor perspective, I'd like to highlight some learnings from SusWASH that are important when you're working towards systems change. And the first one is adaptive management and learning that the report talks about. This is central to working with systems change, but it's also something that donors have been hesitant to fund so far, but it really isn't that complicated. It does require flexibility within planning and reporting frameworks, as the whole idea is that it's not going to be possible to foresee an exact plan going forward. And it's also a slow game. Systems change does take time and won't show results within just a couple of years. And this is something that a donor has to understand and accept and commit themselves to. So here it's useful to combine that slow systems change work with necessary hands-on provision of immediate needs and the infrastructure that has been talked about earlier, because those tangible activities are easier to grasp and see, and can also boost morale within everybody, the teams involved, so that you can see some concrete results within a shorter time frame. And another very important aspect is to have built up a relationship of transparency and trust. The donor has to be comfortable with the relative slow pace before concrete results can be seen. And the implementing partner has to be comfortable with reporting on learnings and failures to the donor without worrying about negative consequences. Systems change work needs to accept failures on the road, I think, and instead see these as lessons learned that help shape the successful way forward. So trust is paramount, and it's important that the donor chooses partners that they can trust. Therefore, doing a thorough due diligence before you embark on a partnership is very important, as well as building up a relationship where the grantee understands the importance of that transparency and feels comfortable in sharing challenges and failure. And the donor really has to make it clear that it is committed to the partnership as long as the transparency is there. So yeah, investing in a transparent relationship is really key.
Thanks a lot. And I'm sensing some themes throughout all of these conversations that start with T's. So we've got trust, transparency, time, and trying. You know, you've got to try new things and adapt and learn from failure. With that, we have lots of questions from the audience coming in, and so I'll come to some of those as well. And let's see the ones that have voted up to the top here. Feel free, I'll pause for a couple of seconds and see if you want to go into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and you can upvote a question that you like. I think there's a little thumbs up in the bottom corner of each question. So if you'd like that one and would like to hear it answered live, please do that. And I think there'll be opportunities for WaterAid to follow up afterwards. I'm committing you guys now to following up with some of the questions afterwards that were very popular if we don't get to them today. So one for Sohail. It's very helpful to hear how you engage with the government. You also noticed their focus on hardware. Were you able to help the government to increase their focus on the sustainability of assets through preventive operations and maintenance and similar approaches? And this sounds similar to the question that we talked about with Sagareta. But Sohail, if you could unmute and answer that question.
Yeah, this kind of the asset mapping work is still under process. So we believe that we'll be able to complete the mapping of the entire district by next year, and we'll be able to share where the gaps are, and hopefully we'll convince them to allocate resources for that. Generally for these schemes, we have also been kind of advocating that while they do the planning, generally what they do is that they calculate the cost for the hardware for the scheme, and not for the life cycle costing is hardly done. So they don't consider it, they just put a percentage of it for maintaining those schemes, and ultimately those schemes end up in being non-functional or not being used. So yeah, this is the area we are aiming to help them with. Once they have this entire data and mapping, probably the next step is to work with them to build their capacity around effective planning. And kind of budgeting is something which is kind of, we can only advocate and kind of bring, like highlight the areas which they can include into their planning. But strange thing is that government never works on the advice of INGO or the communities. So this is kind of, I can quote you, like we have a district level of forum where we wanted to kind of request the members to initiate discussions where they can debate on the allocated budgets for the district and the plans. But we kind of, there was a lot of resistance among the government staff to sit with the community and have those kind of discussions. So yeah, this is kind of as somebody mentioned, that it is something which is quite unknown. So we are trying to mobilize them and convince them and provide them with the right level of data. But the kind of, we are not very sure like if they will be able to, because there are kind of the ask is huge and the amount of resources are shrinking, And then we are working in a district which is very, very kind of out of the 29 districts in Sindh, this ranks, I think, on 26th. So for them, probably it may not be on their priority in terms of their political influence. So they will be interested close to the areas which are where they have more interest or things like that. So I mean, but hopefully we're quite hopeful that once they have the entire data and the picture of the district, we'll be able to convince them on allocating resources.
Thanks so much. And if you can say maybe briefly, what is their reluctance to meet with community members? Is it because they are worried they won't be able to answer all of their demands?
Well, I think that's not the way how government works. Like within this WaSH forum, there are, I think, 5 government departments, and there is only 1 civil society representative. So you can imagine, and again, this is mainly male-dominated membership within that forum, and we have been trying to bring in some female community members, or at least representation from those. But I mean, government officials, when they sit in a meeting, they tend to dominate. They don't, but kind of that's how the bureaucracy works. So I mean, they don't like this kind of a discussion where community points out to them something. But I mean, we are working on that. We have started these kind of discussions within district coordination forums and meetings, and some of the people who understand the philosophy of it, they are quite kind of convinced that this is how the business with regards to WaSH should happen at the district and provincial level. But yeah, I mean, how much time it will take, I think they're still not very clear. Like in 3 years' time, we feel that we have only been able to initiate that discussion in district coordination committee. And every like second year, when they get funding cuts due to any emergency, so I think WaSH is the sector which gets the biggest cuts. I mean, this is not on the priority as well in certain cases.
Thank you. There's lots more questions for you, but I'll move to Segareta because it's somewhat related to this conversation that we were having earlier. Has the government now put in place any technical capacity building plans to address the gaps? So you mentioned you help make the connections and help them self-assess where the gaps are in the system. Are there any plans for technical capacity building?
Thank you, Susan. Yes, one thing we focused on is linking the particular district we are working with the Ethiopian Water Technology Institute, which is a government capacity building institution. And the long-term capacity plan has been developed for the district. And these links include monitoring and coaching after training has been delivered on different technical aspects, on water safety, on monitoring, on electromechanics and planning, strategic planning and others. So this is a long-term relationship for the district. But what we cannot say with confidence is that this support exists for other districts as well. So this is where the national government needs to build capacity to support districts based on the resource they have. They and other donors can support long-term and institutionalized capacity support. But the modules that has been developed by EWTI can be used across the country for different districts. So we have been able to make the link and for the district to be able to go back for support for new staff from EWTI. Can I answer also? There's one question around private sector finance.
Sure.
Yes, can the private sector fill the gap of financing? Absolutely. That's one of the message that WaterAid has in terms of bridging the gap to reach the SDGs for Ethiopia. The gap is so huge, and private capacity is there. but their participation is limited, and WASH doesn't appear to be a very attractive sector because of the risk related and the regulation that exists. And private sector shy away from that sector, especially for microfinances, for instance, are semi-public, but they are profit-making institutions. A lot of small-scale private sector support can be strengthened around building capacities for small enterprises, especially around operation and maintenance in districts. No one else at the district or the zonal government don't have the capacity to go in each village and maintain WASH services. So building this capacity, but also having the right regulatory framework, the right incentive for private sector financing is really important. And we had in WaterAid an interaction with the business, but the private sector, the business association in Ethiopia, and they were really intrigued with how much demand there is, but a lot of studies have been done last year on the gaps, on the restrictions that don't encourage private sector to go into the sector. But this is something that NGOs like WaterAid need to push for. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. You knocked out 2 of those questions. I do want to acknowledge there's a couple of questions for Maria, but we're going to have a whole section for her to answer those. So I'm going to continue on with our panelists. And we have a sort of overarching question that I think is really interesting about the program itself, the SusWASH program. You know, what impact has that had on your WASH portfolio in each of these countries? Has it led you to integrate system strengthening into other work? And let's start with Sokong, see if we can hear you again.
Yes, thank you again. So the impact from the system, I think that like some of our colleagues in Cambodia, the same in terms of we could see the service coverage is increased if we compare to from the beginning of our program, and also in terms of the partner understanding about the system strengthening and way of working approach. For example, I can bring one example that when we implement our system strengthening approach in Kampong Chhnang, and then we take some example to scale to other province and national level, and UNICEF in Cambodia have funded to our WaterAid and other sector to do the modality like by using system strengthening to promote the open defecation free as a provincial wide. And the result for now in Cambodia, there are 5 provinces that have been selected to declare their open defecation free, including the acceleration drinking for water for all by 2023. So it is the one big impact that demonstrated by using the system strengthening, and also the high level political commitment and also the sector leadership that they value about the systems. Because if we want to reach everyone everywhere, they need to thinking about the people and system, and then to reach the universal target in Cambodia, they should be working on the system. And another example that impact from that we could see the monitoring system is the one that can support, that can convert from decision to from the data to decision. Like in case in Cambodia, we could see now the government own on the national monitoring information system that they can manage the data to clear where they are now and what is the gap and what is the investment in the future that they can invest more to ensure they can reach to the target. And another one example that we could see the impact from working to the system, like the leadership development, like we build the local leadership development or champion person that we can promote a local leader to share the commitment and commit their service to the people. For example, like we call the Switch Champion program that we can promote for both male and female leader in the local level to use their leadership in improving the water service. It is the one example that we could see the change from the system strengthening. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, that's great. And maybe let's go to Caesar. Same question. Has the SusWASH program impacted the rest of your WASH programs in Uganda?
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. In Uganda, we've adopted the system strengthening reflected within our strategic plan that looks at strengthening and sustaining WASH services. And this is also reflected in our broader district-wide approach that we are implementing in other parts of the country beyond Kampala. So we are using the lessons learned from Kampala and scaling that up in other parts of the country. And the most recent is but also integrate the district-wide approach using the systems. We're also getting both physical planners, station infrastructure.
I think he just dropped. Sorry, Caesar, but I think what he was saying is they're taking lessons from Kampala and scaling that up in their other work in Uganda, including the district-wide approach. Hopefully he'll come back and we can follow up with him. But how about Sohail? Has the SusWASH program affected how you work in and other WASH programs in Pakistan?
Thank you, Susan. Yes, definitely. Like for us as a WaterAid, this was the sole project which was aimed at system strengthening. So what we did was that we aligned our other programs. Like we were running a WASH Media Fellowship program through another like donor. But we felt that probably to bring in system change, we need to highlight issues, and we engaged them, those media fellows. So that was very kind of effective integration, and the people, local media fellows, they were able to pick WASH issues from that particular district and bring it up at the policy and then wider sector level. Similarly, we are working with a group of parliamentarians. These are elected representatives. But to push their points with regards to their district, I mean, they hardly had any fact sheets or data available. So we are feeding them this WASH information. And then through that, they are putting up questions in the assembly and bringing that up at the policy level as well. We were also able to kind of influence the different projects working in that particular district. Like we found that there were parallel organizations working on WASH, but the plans were not coordinated. So what we did was that we held a meeting with all those projects which were focused at nutrition, WASH, and health. And like we shared the plans, and in that way at the government level, we agreed that, okay, we'll ensure that there is no duplication among all 4 or 5 of us who are working in that particular district. So I think these are a few things which we were able to achieve through our SusWASH project in last 2 to 3 years time. There's another thing as well, like we were working on integrating WASH messaging into curriculum. And through this project, we have recently been able to kind of finalize that, and now that curriculum from the federal level is being rolled out to the provincial level, and there is a lot of opportunity for us to work with teachers and with the students to kind of how that curriculum will be taught in schools, because we are already working on SchoolWASH in some of those schools. And we have also trained master trainer department on MHM and hygiene, and they are doing kind of, not in that particular district where the project is focused, but in the entire 20 districts. We also were able to develop a training module which education department endorsed and adapted it for their teacher training, and that includes component and WASH and on MHM. So I think the project was really helpful in that way to integrate among our own programs within the country and with the other sector partners and with the government especially.
Thank you. That's great examples. And how about Segareta in Ethiopia? Has the SusWASH program changed how you work in other programs?
Yes,
other WASH programs?
definitely. Yeah, the same in Ethiopia. I think the SusWASH program was the first proper system strengthening focused project we had, but all our other programs and projects that we developed have some significant component of system strengthening, depending on the donor. H&M has been a very open donor to system strengthening, so depending on the donor, but all of our programming includes system strengthening because it's a priority, and we really believe we make impact by looking at the system and not just service delivery. Yes, thank you.
Well, that's great to hear. Very interesting to hear how it's influenced work in 4 different countries. And now for Maria, back to you to put you on the spot. There are a lot of interest and questions for you and H&M about basically how do we take what you're doing and influence all the other donors to WASH to think the same way?
Yes. Yeah, one interesting question was about whether NGOs should inform donors to inspire them towards systems change projects. And of course, I say this is important. The H&M Foundation has a long-standing partnership with WaterAid. Well, relative anyway, considering we're quite young. We've only existed for 7 years, but our relationship with WaterAid works so well because we are like-minded, and also because WaterAid are transparent about their ambitions. The H&M Foundation has always had, an ambition to work with a systems change mindset, but we're not the experts on how to do it. So when WaterAid introduced their idea about SusWASH, we were all ears and felt that this could really be something fantastic. So we're joined in a deep conviction that it's really not enough to focus on taps and toilets, and this goes beyond WASH. I mean, in anything you do, in order to ensure inclusive and sustainable WASH services, you need to look at the systems behind that service provision and make sure that they're functional or that they even exist. And we've had that transparent relationship built around trust that I was speaking about earlier, which allows for a journey out into uncharted territory without those roadmaps. And another question was how other donors can be convinced to join us in this ambition. And I can say that there are, of course, a growing number of donors who already do fund systems change in all sorts of areas. Perhaps, we need to look beyond WASH, but SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, is one of them. They really advocate for systems change approach in their funding. And I guess we need to do what we're doing today, sharing the learnings and success stories, inspire and show that it can be done. I want to inspire other donors. I'd say go ahead. The time to act is now. As we're all aware, we are now in the decade of action, and the urgency tells us that it is time to find new ways of accelerating the change needed to reach the SDGs by 2030. We don't have that long. Funding systems change requires a different mindset, and that's really all there is to it. We have realized as a donor that we need to use our role better towards catalyzing systems change on a broad scale. We can't continue asking partners for siloed interventions, which tends to be the sort of traditional way of, a project that's very sort of focused on one issue and very easily sort of measured. And we can't continue doing that, because social challenges don't exist in silos. And and I'd also say that systems change is too complex for any actor to tackle alone, and it requires broad cross-sector collaborations. And then we as donors can really shift the needle and enable holistic systems change and those broad collaborations if we ask for that, and we need to be willing to fund that. So donors can and should allow themselves to be innovative and try new approaches, but also dare to take that more long-term perspective. And all of this will be needed to fast-track change. And we need to face it. Systems change is complex. It will not show the quick results. It is not easy to measure. But we firmly believe that in the long run, this will prove itself to be the most both cost-efficient and impactful approach to improving lives, and our best bet to reach the 2030 goals. So I say donors need to dare to do things differently and invest early in systems change, and we need to step up now. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. I think, as the organizations who are asking for funds, there's a power dynamic there too, right? Of we feel like we can't tell the funders what to do, but the funders can tell each other. So we're happy that you're sharing that message, and I hope there's a few donors on here. I know a couple are. Are you parts of any funder groups where you guys talk to each other and maybe think about co-funding? I know there's some groups like the Big Bang Group and those that will get together and instead of having to do all that due diligence themselves, they would trust that you have done it, and then they would say, oh, we trust your judgment, we would go in with you on that.
Yeah, we are part of a newly formed group called Catalyst 2030, and I'd say that we probably need to do more of that as a foundation, and join more coalitions. But we're hoping to be able to talk more about this type of work when we've come further in actually having proof of concept and show what we've achieved.
Thank you. And we have a little bit of time. There's an interesting question here that I think would go back towards, it kind of answers or deals with some of both the funding and the process of doing system strengthening, but it's about, has WaterAid tracked the internal change process? So not just who you're changing outside, but who you're changing inside. Are you including systems change skills or leadership skills or collaboration skills into your job descriptions, or are you changing the way your fundraisers talk to donors? Hannah or anyone on the call, do you have an answer for that?
Thanks, Susan. I can let my country colleagues talk about their perspective at the national level and local level. I think for us at the global level internally, we haven't really tracked and documented the internal shifts, as it were, in a very systematic way. But I would say that we can see SusWASH having quite a bit of influence with regards to how we work, how we frame what we do. We've just started the global policy development, new global strategy, process for WaterAid. So I think experiences and lessons from SusWASH are feeding into that. Yeah, as I say, we haven't documented, but we have got some funding from Osprey Foundation. I know Lewis is on the call, to help us really try and embed this way of working and way of conceptualizing what we do and how we do it more systematically across not just our programming, but also our communications, how we fundraise, working with our fundraising teams to ensure we're speaking the right language when it comes to generating funding for this way of working, and having skills and capacities internally to be able to operationalize it once we have it. So yeah, definitely I think SusWASH has really helped us to catalyze and build some momentum around this way of working internally, and perhaps documenting how that happened is something we could do later down the line. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Anyone of our other panelists have some thoughts
Yes.
about tracking that internally? Yes, thank you, Sokon.
Yes, thank you. And for the internally, we could see the system strengthening approach is the one modality that now we really invest as a one program. We just only pick example under the Australia Federation. The other three countries like Timor, Cambodia, and Papua New Guinea, we working through the system, and also the system strengthening is the one in our country strategy in 10, and also the regional strategy in 10. And through the SusWASH program, we could see the internally that we improve our internal in terms of the culture and way of working, because when we're working through the system, we should have a organization that create culture for us to try something new and adaptive way of working, that in Cambodia we call the adaptive planning, that every a program we need to have a checking internally and also checking externally in terms to understanding the context change and what is the implication to our program planning. And internally we check the accountability, what is the progress again our planning, and we create the internal tool like the sector building block assessment, and also the program monitoring, evaluation and learning, that we can create that familiar to the building block framework that Hannah shared, and then easy for us to capture and understanding which is the building block that's strong and which is the building block that gap, and also what is the pathway of working that we can contribute to improve it. And working through the system, we need to thinking about our people investment also, that we need to build the skill our internal staff, especially thinking about the interpersonal skill that they have to create the skill in facilitate and mobilize the people in the actor to join talking together as a one common and share the vision together. And also the some tool that can complement to work with the system is like the political economic analysis tool is the one tool that we can map out who are the key player and what is the motivation factor that can inspire and encourage them to invest in the system, and what is the tactic or advocacy platform that we can work with those sector actor. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's really interesting to hear about. That this is so much of this work is about mindsets and different ways of thinking and working, and different targets that you're reaching towards. And with that, I'd like to sum up such a great conversation. I'm so thrilled to have this sort of virtual chat with all of you from around the world. Several of you are up quite late and are struggling with connections issues and families at home and animals, so we really appreciate your time today and your thoughts. So a few takeaway messages, and I'm going to put my own twist on this with a T, but trust and transparency. This work takes long-term commitment and extended time frames. So time is that second part. Both funders and governments and the NGOs all need to think long-term in committing to working in this way, and not expecting any kind of immediate results. It also takes I can't find a T for this one. Flexible budgets and outlook. Mindsets with a T. You've got to have flexible money if you don't have a, I like how Maria said it, in this work there's no roadmap because there's no roads, we're building the roads. So you have to have some flexibility with how you allocate your funds, and under the next one, under the try, the adaptive management. If you're going to try something new, you need to be able to use your funds in different ways. So you need capacity for analysis. We heard several examples of where data can actually influence the way people work. Data can influence the way governments allocate resources. Data can help even a funder understand that working in this way is perhaps more cost efficient and effective in the long term. And then the greater cost effectiveness and catalytic impact. Maria really hit that one hard, and now is the time. Yeah, we've only got 10 years. It's time to think differently, to work differently, to broaden your horizons and your scope of who you work with and how. And that works for funders, that works for NGOs needing to collaborate with each other at global and national levels. It works for governments, different ministries needing to talk to each other. So I would add another C in there, which is collaboration and collective action. And this, yeah, so it's not just within your own organization, but within your sort of WASH sector. So a lot to take in here. I would encourage all of you to read the report, and there will be some recorded conversations available. Here we are, we have our links here, and it's a great way to digest information if you're not a reader, but you can do both. These are great little interviews with folks. And don't forget that there will be a post-event survey. It will take 2 to 5 minutes after this. And I thank all of you. There were a lot of great questions in the Q&A, and apologies if yours didn't get answered today. But this really makes it a valuable conversation, even if you don't get to chat out loud. So we really appreciate your time. Again, for those of you who are coming on late or coming on early. This will be recorded and available fairly soon on the SusWASH page, which is at the bottom of your slide here. And with that, Hannah, do you have anything else to add? Anything I forgot to say?
No, that was great, Susan. Thanks so much. And big thank you to you for helping us to moderate this great conversation, and for all of your questions. Thank you for all your questions, and to panelists and Maria for joining us and answering so well and so detailed. I think it's been a really valuable conversation to have, and to really hear how you apply system strengthening theory, which we can talk about a lot, in practice. So yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.